This is Calgary Radio with Noha Mohamed on Red FM.
لقاء النهاردة عن مسرحية The Green Line. The Green Line هي مسرحية بتحكي عن قصة كذا شخص من خلال الحرب الأهلية في لبنان. شخصية نصيب بيعوز أخته تنسحب من دراستها في الجامعة ينتقلوا إلى الجبال، ولكن أخته منى بتقع في غرام زميلتها يارا في السر. وبعد 40 سنة بنشوف نصيب، بنتعرف على شخصية رامي بابا، وبنشوف شخصية نصيب وهو طالب لبناني كندي، وبنعرف قصته لما بيرجع على لبنان عشان يدفن والده نصيب. وفي الليلة دي رامي بيقابل زيدان وهو دراج كوين، وبيتقابلوا في ملهى ليلي في بيروت، وبتاخد الأمور منعطف غير متوقع. من خلال المسرحية بنشوف تداخل الماضي والحاضر وكيفية وراثة الذكريات أو محوها. اللقاء النهاردة مع مكرم عياش. مكرم عياش هو فنان مسرحي ومعلم لبناني كندي، حائز على جوائز مختلفة لعمله في المسرح. ومكرم مقيم بين ألبرتا وأونتاريو. كتاباته المسرحية بتستكشف تمثيل قصص لأشخاص متنوعة diverse، أهمها مجتمع الميم العربي، ومن خلالها بيأمل مكرم لبناء جسور ونشر فهم أعمق للسياسات والمصاعب الاجتماعية اللي بتأثر عليهم. ضيفتي التانية هي سبيدار فريد، وهي ممثلة في كالجري. اتولدت سبيدار في إيران وعاشت وكبرت في تركيا قبل ما تهاجر لمونتريال، وبعد كده انتقلت استقرت في كالجري. سبيدار هي ممثلة مسرح، كان لها أدوار في مسرحيات مختلفة. احنا كجالية شفناها قبل كده في مسرحية The New Canadian Curling Club لما لعبت دور لاجئة سورية اسمها فاطمة. سبيدار كمان موسيقية وبتأدي في مسارح مختلفة في كالجري، وهدفها العام هو إبراز وتسليط الضوء على الأقلية والاحتفال بقصص عن شخصيات متنوعة عرقيا. تعالوا نشوف لقائي مع مكرم وسبيدار. All right. Makram, can you please tell me what inspired this story?
Yeah, of course. Now that the recording is on, I lost all my words.
Yep, it happens all the time.
I bet. I started this during my master's. I was in a studio and we were being led in an activity, a creative exploration activity, and I caught my face in the mirror and I said, oh my God, I look so much like my dad. And I was doing my master's in Toronto, and this was the first time I was away from my family for as long as I have been, for that length of time. And you know, I was missing them and thinking about them a lot. And so I looked at myself and I thought, I look so much like my dad. Like, I can't escape, not that I want to, but for better or for worse, we can't escape our lineage, our families. And I started to think, what is my relationship to my roots, being Lebanese, have in common with my upbringing in rural Alberta, you know, and growing up, I grew up in a small town, a little 3 hours away from Calgary. You know, how are those things related? And for me, it became a question around how close to my spine is my Arabness, is my Arab identity. How important is it really, especially compared to my queer identity, which it felt like I was going to Toronto, the holy center of queer life, you know, like I was going there to pursue that maybe on some subconscious level. So I became interested in exploring how close, how necessary is my Arab identity, how necessary is my queer identity, and it felt like they disconnected, but actually through this play I discovered that my queerness is the connective tissue between all of it, between all those worlds.
Can you tell me more about this? How did you reconcile the Arab identity with the queer identity?
Yeah, I mean, part of my writing and, you know, you could say research for this play is I took a trip to Lebanon in 2016, and that trip was transformative in that it was the first time I met queer Arab people in Lebanon. I went to a workshop on gender equality is what they called it, but then in the workshop we were talking about trans identities, non-binary identities, but all in Arabic. Hearing it in Arabic was like the most affirming experience of my life, and it really made it real. It made it real in a way that when I had to understand my queerness through English, it always felt like an alternative life. But then all coming together, because the reality is there are queer people in Lebanon, there are queer people all over the Middle East. We have always been there, we will always be there, and when we're able to give voice to that experience, it connects it all together, that I don't need to decide. I don't need to choose between being Arab or being queer. I am actually all of those things, and it's a perfectly compatible relationship. And certainly it's my experience. I know it comes with all sorts of difficulties and all sorts of struggles, but that's my experience, and writing is my way to explore that. Writing is my way of engaging with that. And so in writing this play, what I hope is that the offering is we can see how all these parts of ourselves can come together in really honest ways.
Sepidar, with all of this, how much pressure do you feel right now? Is it just enough material for you to work with?
It's so interesting actually hearing you talk about this, because you go into the play and you do, and now I'm thinking about so many of the scenes, and I'm like, oh, this makes sense. Yeah. Oh, now it's like I'm even like understanding it even further. And yeah, I think we all understand the significance of the play, and for each of us that can have a different significance. But I think also the significance of the play within our communities, for Calgary in general, for Middle Eastern communities. And so yeah, hearing you say all of that, I think it gives more meaning to that as well.
Tell me a little bit about the prep work that you put in this role, Sepidar, and how is it any different from the roles you've played in the past?
Yes, it was funny because we were actually talking about, so I play the character of Mona, and there is, I am not queer, but I sense such a closeness to Mona. Mona is a dreamer. She is like very brave. She wants to be herself. She encourages the people around her to be themselves, and I really connect to that. And I think I'm finding it's funny every day in rehearsal, and this is a very different experience for me. I find Mona to be a very deep character, and even today in rehearsal, discovered a whole new part of her that I was like, oh man, it was I've never had that kind of a moment with a character before in a play, and so it was beautiful to have that, and to sense that depth in different layers, to have the opportunity to be in a place such as this that offers such characters that are that deep that you can go into layers after layer and you won't tire of it. You won't be like, okay, I understand her now. There's so much, just as every human is very layered. Right. I think, and that's what makes the show special to me, that the characters, it's all about the characters. You fall in love with these characters, you root for all of them, you sometimes get annoyed with them, but that's what life is and relationships are, and that's how the play comes about.
What did the moment of clarity look like today?
It's interesting. So I actually I have a dual identity, I guess. One part of me is very academic. I do psychology, therapy. I'm almost a full therapist. And the other part of me is the artist, and I do creative things. But I told them that I didn't realize, so Mona is in love with Yara, and in these conversations, and Yara all of these characters have had difficult experiences, and in listening to some of Yara's difficult experiences, I was tapping into my therapist brain. I was explaining to the cast that I was feeling this compassion towards Yara, that I understand it's hard because Yara is a refugee and has experienced really difficulties in refugee camps and has been in a state of war her whole life. And I, as Mona, offer this compassion to her. But then today we were doing this scene where I realized that Mona is so hurt because there is something that she needs that's not being met, and I discovered that need for love, for Yara to take a chance with her, to, you know, be like, just take my hand and like we'll fly away, but Yara won't, and there's that fear, and how much that hurts Mona, and that kind of took me off guard, that I switched suddenly from seeing it from an outsider perspective of understanding Yara, but then understanding Mona and what her experiences mean and what she needs in that moment.
You played a Syrian refugee before in the New Canadian Curling Club. Does that in any way help you find compassion for Yara?
Oh, I never even thought about that. That was a very significantly different show and character.
Right.
I think the compassion I was finding for Yara was actually like probably my own experiences of immigration. Because in New Canadian Curling Club, I never got the opportunity to discover that side of Fatima as much, because it was more of her experiences settling in
life after Canada.
Yes. Yes. So I think when I was listening to Yara, it was also like, I have worked with a lot of immigrant families, a lot of refugee families, and it kept reminding me of those moments that I would try to support these families. And then I realized that on top of that compassion, there was also the need of the character of Mona. And that was very interesting to me.
Makram, can you please talk to me a little bit about the casting process? How difficult was it, or how easy was it to find Arabs for the play / Middle Easterns? What was the casting process like? Because I've been doing this show for 7 years. I know a lot of creatives have issues finding people to, like, creative people in the city. Tell me about all of that.
Oh yeah, I mean, it took a long time for it to all come together and all the pieces to land, because, you know, you can imagine Middle Easterners, you know, Lebanese people, Arab people are such a small population. Middle Easterners are also small. Now get people that are in the arts, not engineering, doctor.
Right.
That you know, trifecta that our parents wish for us. Like, get them in the arts, and then get them willing and open to do queer content,
right?
And then have them fit the character. So that's a lot of moving parts. And so a big conversation for me is that I think, and you're touching on it, is that this is a character-driven story. And so if people see the humanity of these characters, that to me is what's going to create more empathetic threads between non-queer people, non-Arab people, or queer people and Arab people seeing themselves represented, or seeing a story that might represent their experience. So for me, it was most important that we get the people that are qualified to share this story in the most honest way possible. And a part of that is, of course, I want them, you know, we want them to come from Middle Eastern experiences. We want them to come from queer experiences, feminist experiences, these different understandings, but it's a hard jigsaw puzzle to solve. And so ultimately, I mean, the two women, to be honest, was like, when we saw them in auditions, we're like, okay, that's it. So we knew, and we, you know, because it was really strong work. And so Sepidar is Iranian, Filsen is from Somaliland, and so they're both adjacent to Arab communities, but not Arab, but still have an access to it in a way that's different than if we like hired a Latinx person, a Latino,
right.
You know what I mean? It's different. It's also different that you have the playwright acting in the room as well. It's also different that you have Jenna Rogers, who is extremely literate and culturally sensitive directing, to run the room, you know? So there's appropriation is a complicated thing, and so it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. And this is certainly not, though. This is certainly a way that we were able to bring the team together that feels really excellent. The hardest role to cast was Zidane Fifi, this like kind of masculine, feminine Lebanese drag queen, also gets out of drag, really like confident, but also disenchanted Lebanese guy. Like that, where am I gonna find that, you know?
Where did you find him?
we found this incredible, wonderful Iranian actor, Ryan Abdullah Hooper, and he came from Toronto, and so he like that. It was so important that they can fit the character, that they can fit into the character, and that authenticity can sometimes come in like the Lebanese accent that I hear from some auditioners, and sometimes it comes in a capacity to carry the energy of the character. And so it was a negotiation between all those parts. But ultimately, what was really beautiful about this whole casting experience was I created a long list of Middle Eastern actors. So I've got tons of people on my list, phone numbers, emails, and many people were very excellent performers. They just weren't right for the role.
Right.
You know what I mean? But now, like I have plenty of plays with Middle Eastern, Arab characters. So I'm.
You're like, I have a database that I could go to.
It connected me with a lot of people, and a lot of people that said, a lot of cis straight guys that said, I don't want to audition because I don't want to take up that queer space. And so, but let's stay in touch. I'm really excited by your play, let's stay in touch. And so it in some beautiful way, it starts to build a community and a network, which is something we really need as Arabs, but as Middle Easterners, we need that dialogue happening in theater particularly. There's some models in America that have it, and we just don't have anything like that in Canada. So
no, how do we leverage it here? Like as different organizations, different creatives, how do we make use of that?
It needs some like locus of leadership. Somebody to say let's have some sort of hub, some sort of cultural infrastructure that doesn't need to be like literally a space, even though that would be great, but it can be a website or ad hoc group that brings together directors, actors, playwrights, emerging playwrights, mentorship opportunities. Because I know many, because my work is often Lebanese, Arab, queer, I know many Lebanese and Arab and Middle Eastern artists, and I say Middle Eastern, I mean also like North African, also South Asian. You know what I mean? It's a matter of finding a way to have us tethered together in some place where we're able to talk about the complexity of the politics and the experience, the identities of our regions and our lands, and to hold space for all of the diversity, because we are the original multicultural lands,
Right. Talk to me about diversity and representation in Canadian theatre, because it's hard to find a play that is Arab-led or about Arabs, let alone finding an LGBTQ plus Arab play. What are the challenges that come with making something like this happen?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, I feel very fortunate and lucky. I didn't set out to write a queer Arab play. I set out to write a play, and I can only write from my experience. And so I happen to write queer Arab plays, and I feel like I've always had a community, typically a white community, but a community that has nourished and encouraged that. They really have. And we're having this moment in the arts, in the publicly funded arts. So when I apply for grants, when I apply for festivals, where there's an opening of a door, they're saying, you come from an experience that hasn't been represented a lot, come in and take the space, let's see what you do. Now, I always think between me and myself, that's just an invitation. The hard work has to happen when I get there, and I have to do the hard work, and I think I have been doing it. And so, I'm very lucky that Jenna and Claire from Downstage and Chromatic have said, let's produce this play, and we were going to produce it in 2020, and then we delayed, and now here we are in 2022. It's not to say that there's a shift happening in the industry. There's a desire to hear Black, Indigenous, people of color voices, queer voices. But the other side of that is like, then it's who is the subscriber base of these theaters, these companies?
Right. What
kind of risk are theater companies that have a big subscriber base that's predominantly older white people? Are they willing to take that kind of risk? Chromatic and Downstage have always been representing marginalized artists and community serving community needs. Would Theatre Calgary dare to put up a queer era play? And my hope is that people don't see it as a queer era play, but they see a story, and they see a story of humanity, and certainly queerness and Arabness is a part of that story, and I love those words, and they need to be said. But ultimately, it's that, like, you're not queer, and you're like, I'm resonating with this character. That's what more, you know. I grew up reading white boys all my life, Harry Potter, blah blah blah, and I love those characters.
Right.
At the core of it, we have a shared humanity.
I love that. I love it. Talk to me a little bit about how the pandemic, and this question is for both of you. I'd love to hear from you too, Sepidar. The pandemic how has it changed your work in theater? Like, I know from a writer's perspective, maybe not to put any words in your mouth, but I kind of want to hear your experience. A lot of writers said, I had all the time in the world to sit down and write. A lot of actors said, everything paused for us. We have no idea when we're going to be back at work. So I'd love to hear your experiences. How did the pandemic affect your work?
Oh, I'll go.
Go ahead.
It was interesting because I did New Canadian Curling Club, and as I was doing that show, I had applied to master's programs in psychology. And I chose the university I chose University of Calgary because I wanted to stay in Calgary. And so I entered the program, and I was so sad because I was like, I just did this big show, and as an actor, I felt like I had to take a break because I couldn't do full-time school, and it's a very difficult program. And so I was like, I can't do that and do acting. I would do small things on the side. And then the pandemic happened in my second semester, the middle of my second semester, and everything shut down. And this is so horrible to say, but a part of me was like, okay, I'm not gonna like miss out on too much. I feel like a real pause, and I was like, oh, okay, I just need to finish school now so that when we all come back, that I can be in there as well and like get these opportunities. And unfortunately, in the art scene, I feel like sometimes if people don't know you, like, that's it. Like, it's so hard to get back into doing shows and everything, and it's all about who you know. And then, so I'm almost done my master's. I'm finishing my thesis, which is interestingly about how people used arts during the pandemic to cope with the pandemic. And so, I definitely did, even on my own, like singing, acting. And a big thing that I did that I've always wanted to do is write my own play. And I've always wanted to tell my own immigration story in some way. And so I applied to the Chromatic Theater's BIPOC playwright unit. And I got in, and I was so excited. So now I'm writing a play because they gave me that opportunity.
Amazing.
And I'm really excited. Yeah, so I got to do that, and that was like the highlight for me of the pandemic, that I took this chance finally to like write. Because I had done a lot of collective collaborations, but never actually write a play for a cast. And now being in this play, like coming back from the pandemic and doing this, it just feels so right. And it's like the universe kind of like aligned in some way. And I'm so thankful for this play being in Calgary and for us to have the chance to do it right out of the gate with things starting to open up. Downstage, just say, last year, it was like on our first reading of the play, so on our first day of rehearsal, Downstage had 2 years ago closed their last show. Yeah. And this is one that is opening live again. That's
pretty special.
Yes, that's so exciting.
Is there anything, sorry Makram, but is there anything about the play you're writing, Sepidar, that you can tease, maybe, if we want to maybe expect it later?
So, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but it actually talks about in your play as well, of Turkey is a country where a lot of people try to, if they're fleeing their land, they go through Turkey a lot.
Right.
And so Turkey becomes this hub of an incredible amount of different cultures and people from different ethnicities, different countries that end up there. And that community there, not a lot of people know that there's so many different races and cultures and that end up there, but all of them trying to flee and go to a better place. So there's this interesting vibe in Turkey. So this story is about the experiences of those immigrants trying to escape war, discrimination, violence, and going to Turkey and finding this community, but then also trying to leave. And so yeah, the title of my place for now is Limbo.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Makram, how's your pandemic experience?
I know, it's so funny because I was like, I need to cast now all light.
Now I better actually work.
Better be in this play.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Makram, what's your experience with the pandemic?
I mean, as a writer, I did write a new play and got a lot of opportunity to workshop it through Zoom and whatever, and I got several opportunities to make it an audio play, and we just did a show of it at Buddies in Bad Times Theatre in Toronto as an audio play.
Cool.
And that has been really amazing, but I can't wait to get in the room for that play. So the pandemic, I mean, like everyone, it's like there have been some really big highlights that came out of it, mostly sleeping in. And there have been some really low points of it, and we're still in it, you know what I mean? Like we are still like scared something is gonna happen. We're still worried about these sorts of things, and I wrote a lot, and I came home to Edmonton. I was living in Toronto. I came home to Edmonton, and I feel very fortunate that I was, there's a lot of programs that I was doing in Toronto that I was able to sustain because everything was online. And so I feel very just blessed that things worked out in as best a way as possible, considering the really devastating circumstances we're surrounded by, So I have a lot of community and friendships and collaborators in Toronto. I was physically in Edmonton and built some relationships and reinvigorated some relationships there. And now I'm in Calgary doing this show. Like, it's been, given everything, I have to take a moment of just a lot of gratitude, a lot of gratitude. It's been a hard time, but it's, it could have been so much more catastrophic given how our industry has been impacted by it.
Right. It was one of the most hard-hit industries because everything literally paused.
Yeah.
Indefinitely, sort of thing. Okay, let's talk about the other artists in the show who aren't in this interview today. Who would you like to talk about? I particularly was really interested in direction. Jen Rogers' poster design is really cool. Can we talk about that? Set design? Who's behind the scenes?
Sam Mendoza created the poster, and they were hired to create the posters for all of Downstage's season. And so if you look at their shows or their programming, you'll see thematically, aesthetically, thematically, there's a consistency. But the poster that Sam designed, I had sent images of inspiration, and the green line itself in Lebanon was actually it's called Khatt al-Tamas. It's the place that divided the east and west, and it literally, because of 15 years, it grew green trees everywhere. So I sent those images. Then there's also this really beautiful map. An artist rendered it of Beirut, and the green line was like a stitch running across it. They had marked it with this in a very nice aesthetic way, and I had used that map a lot during the writing of my play. So I sent those images, and I sent what 1970 Beirut and Lebanon was like. I sent all that's where my parents were young people growing up into their early 20s, and then suddenly there's a war everywhere. It's not like lands, and surely we know this. It's not like our lands are constant war. Our lands are incredible, and Lebanon particularly. I love it so much, and it was such an incredible, if I could take a vacation in time, it would be to 1970 Lebanon, and so I sent all those images, and Sam came up with this really beautiful poster where the inverse is the beaches and the lounging around in Beirut, and then the bottom is so much of the green line and the war and the concrete building with the bullet holes through it. I love the poster. And then the middle, for me, and I keep saying this, what tethers it all together is the queerness, and I think you'll have to see the play to see how that might manifest. But Sam put this like open sign, like a sign, a street store sign, and it says salam, right, in Arabic. So it looks. I'm really, that's how that came together. I really love it. I love that it's Arabic, and I love that it's like this poster that I'm seeing around Calgary, and I hope that excites Arab readers, certainly.
Yeah, it does.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Set design. I don't know too much about. I know Aliyah. So Aliyah Shahab is designing, and I was so excited when I saw her name because I used to work with Aliyah. I don't know if she's still with Antics Community Arts, and they did incredible work with marginalized youth in Calgary. And so I was working at Aspen Family as a mental health counselor for youth, and Aliyah was the artist. And so it was funny because Antics and Aspen would collaborate a lot, and I used to volunteer at Antics. So then when I got to work with them, it was awesome. And I remember Aliyah and I created these with the youth in Northeast Calgary. I think a lot of them were at Nelson Mandela High School.
Okay.
So at Village Square, no, not Village Square, Genesis Center in the Northeast, we created these incredible things that were hanging in Genesis Center, and we had created them with these youth, and most of them were Middle Eastern youth, and so it was so fitting for me that Aliyah was designing this set because I was like, she's gonna know, she will know the heart of this story. And I don't know if you know more about set design. I just know about Aliyah herself.
The set, I'm excited to see how it all comes together. Right now we're working with renderings, like 3D models and whatever, looking at it and working in the theater as it's taped out. We're trying as best as possible to use the resources we have within a Calgary context to represent a reality of Lebanon, and then the play has some magical realism in it. So there's gonna be the Eds in Lebanon, the cedars are it's prominent in the set, and then it might glow, it might grow, it might light up,
Cool.
Something to look out for.
Very cool.
I'm excited to see it come together.
And then there's Jenna.
Yeah, talk to us about. Is she still in the room?
No, we're in the dining room. But
we're alone now.
What do we really think of Jenna? Okay.
I was telling the cast the other day, Jenna was the very first person I ever met in the theater community in Calgary.
Oh.
I never planned on becoming an actor. I did my minor in drama after university, but I was like, I'm not gonna, the Middle Eastern mentality of no, I need to make money,
Yes, of course.
Become a psychologist. And I've loved art, but Jenna was the first person I met, and since the first day, she has been so welcoming. She has been so. I was telling Philson yesterday. Philson plays Yara, and we were talking yesterday about how much Jenna has done for us without even directly doing it for us, but for the community. She is so active. I don't know, she's a new mom and she's still out here putting on these productions because she knows how important opportunity is. And for her to give so many opportunities by being in these leadership positions, that is so important. And so I think it showcases how much she cares by doing that, by putting in so much work. And she's just a genius director as well. But I've always wanted to work with Jenna, so I'm very happy. After I think I met her.
It's like a full circle moment for you.
I know, and I'm like, oh my God, I finally get to work with her. I'm like, she's the celebrity director.
Yeah, truly. Jenna, when I was in Edmonton in my undergrad, I started a queer theater company, and someone connected me with Jenna. And I was thinking, how do we incorporate anti-oppression into theater companies? And that's how I met her. And she's just been like an unwavering support in this exact same way. Like she's, for her to be a part of the producing team that's producing my first ever professional production, you know what I mean? That's huge. And today we were working on a scene, and like Sepidar is crying, I'm crying,
Oh.
and Jenna's leading it, and it's my favorite scene in the play. And I'm just thinking, oh, how lucky I am to have this team. Jenna's so articulate and specific and precise and compassionate.
I was literally going to say compassionate.
So compassionate and thoughtful, considerate. I could keep giving you metaphors. I really do think Canada as a theater ecology is so lucky to have Jenna. Is so lucky to have them.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't hope. I know she's just gonna keep on skyrocketing. She's one of a kind.
All right, I want to get final words, final thoughts from both of you, please. Sepidar, I'll start with you.
Oh, final words. Oh,
Just any old word.
I feel like this play is for everybody. That's what I'm gonna say. It is really truly for everybody, because everybody will find a connection to something in the play about who they are, about where they come from, about their relationships. It has every emotion you can imagine, and it is so genuine and authentic that I really, really hope that Calgary and outside of Calgary as well, they come to see this and see the run. Like, it's a beautiful theater, beautiful set. Everything. It's a gorgeous play, so I hope they come see. Come see it.
I would say, I really invite, like, openly welcome and invite Arab people, particularly, and Middle Easterners. But if it's my biggest. I have fear and anxiety, and I'm scared of approaching this topic, but it's so important that gay Arab is not something that's strange, that's not something that's unusual to say, that this is a play written by a gay Arab about queer Arabness and queer Arab experiences, and that I really openly welcome Arabs of all walks of life to come watch it, and Middle Easterners broadly, to come and see, because we're your children. It's the straight people that are having me. We're your children. We are your brothers. We are your kin and your siblings. And so it's I just don't I don't want to be in fear about it. I want to welcome people and to come and see the humanity and the dignity, the true dignity that this kind of storytelling and this team that we brought together can actually do.
Yeah. And I want to say, I think it's a big deal that this whole cast and almost the whole crew is people of color.
Right.
That very, very rarely happens. And to feel this ensemble now, to feel the emotions, the conversations we have, that is invaluable, honestly. And I think that will show in this the performances as well to an audience.
Okay. Let me now tell you for a second. I've known about this play since you guys started casting, like when you were asking for people to audition, and I've been waiting for it ever since. So I'm very excited it's finally happening, and I just can't wait to see it. I think this is going to be great.
Thank you for this interview. That was
Yeah. Thank you guys. Thank you, Sepidar. Thank you, Makram. I'm very excited to see what's going to happen with this play.
I hope you love it.
I know.
I hope you love it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.